All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second SeriesFest Vanguard Program. I'm Randy Kleiner, the co-founder and CEO of SeriesFest, and thank you for joining us on this Thursday afternoon, potentially closer to evening or morning, depending on where you're calling from. This SeriesFest Vanguard Program is a brand new professional development initiative that we are presenting in partnership with our incredible partners at Canva, which we're going to tell you a lot more about as we go through this. But we're bringing some just invaluable insights from groundbreaking visionaries in the television industry about pitching and content and development process and the resources they use. And today is absolutely no different. I'm very excited to be joined by some incredible creatives in the industry. So I'm just going to introduce them quickly, and you'll meet some of them as we go through today's workshop. But joining us from Littleton Road Productions, we will have Kelly Funke, the president of Littleton Road Productions, and Patrick Macmanus, who is also a writer, producer, showrunner. He was the writer and showrunner on Dr. Death season 1, and of course an executive producer on season 2, which is out right now. Hope you're all caught it. He's also currently adapting a new series based on Anderson Cooper's book about the Vanderbilt family, which Kelly will also be an EP on. They've also worked on The Girl from Plainville and have a huge resume, and I'm really excited to chat with them about their creative process further in. I'm also joined by, as you can see with me here, Kate Marsden, the head of global brand partnerships at Canva. And later we will be joined by Brenda Cadman, who is a Canva, they say educator here, but I'm going to go with Canva expert because she truly knows all the ins and outs of Canva. So we have a really exciting program for you today, and we are going to go through an introduction to Canva. Then I'll go in conversation, as I mentioned, with Patrick and Kelly. We'll do a demonstration showing some different tools. If you were with us on the first one, we're going to show you some different exciting tools that Canva has to offer the creative process. And then we'll do a Q&A. So I'm going to kick it over to begin to Kate to talk a little bit about Canva.
Thank you, Randy, and a really big hello to everyone. Hello again if you joined us already on the first workshop where we had Sue-Ann Pian, and a big warm welcome to everyone here that's new. As Randy said, I head up global brand partnerships at Canva, based out of our head office in Sydney, Australia. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation and to show you a little bit more about how Canva can help you throughout all parts of your creative process. But for those of you who missed the intro to Canva in the last workshop, or for those of you who aren't as familiar with Canva, let me tell you a little bit about our platform. We're 10 years old, and our mission from day one has never changed. We're on a mission to empower the world to design, and we actually quite literally mean that. We want anyone to be able to design no matter what language they speak, what device they're on, or their background. We want everyone to have the ability to express their ideas and to do their best work in the most visual way. And I'm very proud to say that we are female founded and led. Our founder, Mel Perkins, it's an interesting story of how she dreamt up the idea of Canva. She was actually teaching university students in Perth, Western Australia, design software. And it was through this process that she saw how complicated and difficult a lot of the programs were at the time. They took years to master, years to teach, they were expensive, and therefore they weren't accessible. And at the same time, Mel looked out at the whole design ecosystem, and she just saw how fragmented it was. And for anyone on this webinar who was designing back then would understand the fact that, where we'd have to go and get B-roll footage was a different platform to where you would get fonts, was a different platform again to where you'd get stock imagery. And then you'd go somewhere else and design the thing, and then you would go somewhere else to store it. It was really fragmented, which meant that it was inaccessible. So that's where Mel came up with the idea of Canva. And to put it simply, all of that design ecosystem in Canva is integrated into one simple page. But many of you might have been familiar with Canva from the early days, where we really started out as a social media platform design tool. But that has changed considerably in the last few years, especially. And we've launched and continue to double down on what we call our visual suite. So you can now come onto Canva and design very visually impactful documents, whiteboards, which we're going to show you more about today, presentations like this one. Our video and photo editing tools are getting stronger and stronger. You can bring your designs to life in a whole raft of print products, and you can create websites in a few easy clicks. So to give you a quick overview of the product, we've got a quick video to show you. So that's about the product, but let's just kind of helicopter out for a moment and think about the industry and the work that you all have to do. You know, regardless of what job you do and what industry you're in, the pressure on all of us now to be able to deliver work that is highly visual has just dramatically increased. But arguably in entertainment, the ability and the need to do so is absolutely mission critical. You know, in talking to many people in the industry, they tell us that, you know, the visual, how strong and how visually strong a pitch deck is can often mean whether a project is going to get greenlit or not. And that's really where we want to come in and help empower folks like you, because we see that regardless of what stage you're at in the creative process and regardless of what job you do in the industry, you all need to be able to express your ideas and your vision for the next TV series or film in a visually impactful way. So that's why we're here. Canva's been showing up in the entertainment industry in a few key ways. Firstly, we've been leveling up our product. We're going to show you a bunch of our entertainment-specific templates shortly that we've been creating and will continue to create based on your feedback. We've been partnering with industry organizations that are really value-aligned and doing really great work, of course, SeriesFest being a key one. And we're doing more of these workshops and demos. You know, the feedback from people in the industry is that they want to level up their design skills. So that's where we come in. But that's all, I think, for now. You're going to see more about the product in a moment, but now it's time to hear from Patrick and Kelly. And so, Randy, I'll hand it back to you and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Kate. And I please everybody join me in welcoming Patrick and Kelly, so we can talk about their creative process, pitch process, and all things Dr. Death as well. Thank you. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
And hello to so many people around the country and the world, it looks like. Quick shout out to Natalie Avatal. I see her up, so good stuff.
Well, amazing. Thank you both for joining us. Kelly, I want to start with you because I know that you work with a lot of creators to help them create their pitches. And I wanted to hear from you kind of, how do you approach a pitch?
Oh, wow. That's a broad, awesome question. We'll try and drill it down for you. So I think that every writer on this particular webinar is going to say that the worst part of their job is actually having to write the pitch. So appreciative to you folks in Canva for putting this together. We actually, when we work with writers, we offer them a wireframe. because we have found over almost 18 years of Patrick and I working together, we're dating ourselves here, P, that there is actually there is a structure that you can use to get the first several drafts of the pitch down. Ultimately, like any great creation, you have to then, right, let that structure go and make it your own. But we work with our writers very closely to try to be able to outline for them what the document should look like and what the buyers are looking like. Again, I want to clarify that we do work specifically in the world of streaming. I think that's a really important question, especially for our earlier days writers on this webinar, to always be asking, you know, who's feeding you what? So our POV is always through the lens of a premium streaming pitch. And that is different than a linear or a broadcast pitch, actually. And those of you who have followed the space know it can also be distinct to the studio that you're working with. But we have tried to aggregate across all studios and all distributors a simple wireframe for our writers to use.
And I just wanted to throw, because you mentioned that amazing wireframe, which I was able to take a look at, and we will be sharing that with all of you who have joined us today following this. But it's a really incredible tool as you're you know, approaching a pitch and trying to come up with, you know, what to include, where to include it, how to include it. You know, what do you think, Kelly, are the key things that you see are usually not included in a deck that you're like, I don't understand, like, you know, what are the key big mistakes that you see when creators come to pitch?
Well, the first one is their opening. And I, you know, Patrick and I talk about the pitch as leading your audience, in this instance, your buyer, through the emotional process of what they're going to experience when they actually get the pilot in front of you and get the season in front of you. So one of the things that I see over and over again is that first 3 minutes of the pitch, which most of the time is pretty dry. And if you think about it, especially those of us who work in the marketing space, right, you want to grab them in the first few minutes. So we encourage our writers to find the most interesting moment. I call it the one sheet moment, right? It's that marketing moment of your pilot. And we ask our writers to front load that to the top. And we encourage our writers to take that moment and actually frame it as a question that will allow you to be able to elicit a universal emotion from the person who is hearing it. I know that sounds possibly a little bit confusing, but it's not if you think about it. So assuming a lot of people on here have seen Game of Thrones, right? If you think about that opening 3 minutes of that pilot, right, there is a great way to tee that up that isn't just imagine that you're a squire from an imaginary world in a forest and you see a bunch of people that possibly look like Frosty the Snowman, except a lot scarier, right? Like that's one version of it. The other version of it is, you know, we all have had a moment in time where we felt lost, right? Where we've been with our friends and we're not quite sure what's going to happen, and we stumble across something that we see that we don't understand, right? It's about, in that first 3 minutes, making your audience realize that the story that you're going to tell connects with them. And that is what we find is a great sort of hook to suck people in. And I don't see a lot of writers doing that, even though we absolutely see it when we watch it on TV, when you watch that finished product, right? That teaser is there to sort of pull you in. So we encourage our writers to find their words and images, if they're using images, to pull that first 3 minutes and make it universal and memorable.
Thank you. I think that's such a great tip. And I know, since you mentioned using images, I wanted to Patrick, go over to you, because I know you have a little bit of a unique pitching style, but you're also very comfortable in a room, you're performative. But talk to me about how you approach a pitch, Patrick.
Well, first of all, my way of pitching has evolved over the years, and I'm not being self-deprecating or trying to be funny, but I'm old. And I started my career in 2004, when the way that you pitched was that you set up sort of like what your log line was. I mean, literally, they were like, "What's your log line? Do your log line." And they say, okay, now list out all the characters and what their characteristics are, and then maybe give like a thing that they do in the first season, and then maybe give a thing that they do in the subsequent seasons, and then do a wrap up, right? And it was the way it was done. And then I met an executive in the early streaming days, a little bit before that, who really said, look, you know, you should try doing it in a narrative form. So our wireframe that we have is sort of built off of us both succeeding and failing in trying to do all those things that were in the original version of a pitch, but through a narrative. And it is, as you said, Randy, it for me, it's very performative. I don't believe in visuals unless we're working with a producing director or we've got a director attached, in which case then it's not any of my business, and it's up to the director to come to the table with what they think the vision of the show should be, and then we work together to figure that out. But if I'm alone, I genuinely just want them listening to the words. And part of the challenge of that, though, is that I have to also be compelling, and that I can't guarantee that I am, but it requires that, like, I basically spend the 7 days prior to a pitch just running the pitch for 8 hours a day. So for about 56 hours before I do the pitch, I am every day running the pitch. And then the 3 hours prior to the pitch, I show up at wherever I'm supposed to be to do the pitch, and I run the pitch for 3 hours before I actually put it on. I have found success in it for myself. But I will also say that same executive who urged me to find a narrative form of pitching also said, you know, that's not for everybody. And that you're being hired to be a writer, and you're not being hired to be an actor. And even though on the surface I'm a writer, deep down I really wished I was an actor. So it's also important that whatever we do with the pitch, and however the pitch is delivered by writers that we work with, that they feel comfortable doing it, and they should not feel like there's a one size fits all version of pitching. We absolutely mold our way to their way, and we will not rely on a writer to perform a soliloquy if that is not where they feel comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you both have tapped into, though, is it's an art form, pitching. It's its own special thing. You can't just have a great idea, right? I mean, you can just have a great idea, but if you want to see it on air, right, the first thing you have to do is pitch it. And whether it's from creating the materials, then writing out the actual pitch, to rehearsing it like that, like you said, Patrick, to then getting up and doing that, it's really an art form that takes time to care and tend to, and all those things.
Well, I'll also say that, like, oh, sorry, Kelly, go ahead. I was just saying, look, it's something, Randy, you point out, like, something that Ted Sarandos said at SeriesFest a few years ago, and I remember it really clearly, where he said, it's funny, like, the one thing that you don't get taught in school when you're a writing major is how to pitch, and it's the first thing you got to do to be able to be a writer in Hollywood, right? And so it's one of the many things that many of the reasons, and you didn't ask me to say this, I mean it, that SeriesFest is so important, right? But what you guys do in terms of trying to help people figure out how to pitch, it is an art form. There is no question about it. And sometimes I'm surrounded by writers all the time. That's what I do, right? And so often I hear a good percentage of them being like, "Oh God, I gotta fucking do this," and like, just you read my script. Like, what else do you need to know? And it's like, well, you can have that attitude, and you can feel like you're a used car salesman. And I always call myself a used car salesman. That is what I am. And I'm really good at it, for sure. Better than writing or producing. But it is something that you have to perfect, and it's a craft. And you have to study it and work at it and fail and figure out how to succeed in all your failures. And even if you give the greatest pitch in the world, as many people here on this know, and I can absolutely attest to, 9 out of 10 times you're not going to sell your project. But you have a much better chance of selling your project if you've got a really compelling pitch. Sorry, Kelly.
No, the other thing I was just going to say is that, you know, if any of you on this call have potentially worked on the buying side of the equation before you've moved over to the creative side of the equation, you know that in any week, those executives are probably hearing 3 pitches a week comfortably. And then they have to walk into a room with 15 other executives who have also heard 2 to 3 pitches a week. So you do the math, right? So your ability to be able to create those, we don't think about it as human beings, right? We don't actually remember the specifics of things that happen. Our memories are the emotional reactions that we've had to anything. So the more that you're able to tap into getting them emotionally engaged in the story that you're telling, the better you're going to end up, because someone is going to have to take your pitch and turn it into 3 minutes in a room times 15 executives. And that's a pretty daunting thing when you think about it. But that's why the importance of pitching can't be underscored enough. So start now. If you're an early day writer, the early day writers that we work with and mentor, we not only have them write their pilots, but we also have them write their pitches so that we can work with them on both sides of that coin.
I think it's such a good
reminder. Want to sell, right? If you want to staff, it's
Yeah.
not as important. But if you want to sell, then you got to learn both of those skills and practice them at the same exact time.
No, totally. It's like learning in acting school where it's like auditioning is part of the process, pitching is part of the process. You're going to get a lot of failure, you're going to get, but you only need the one yes, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you only need that one yes.
Yeah.
I just want to remind everybody that there is a Q&A function, and we will have, I'll be answering some questions as we go, but also towards the end, we'll have a Q&A section. So if you have any questions for Patrick or Kelly or later the Canva team, please make sure to use the Q&A function. But I want to go over and talk a little bit about, of course, Dr. Death. First of all, season 2 plug streaming on Peacock right now. It is absolutely phenomenal, dark, twisted, daunting. I will tell you, as one note of caution, do not watch it right before bed. I certainly had some crazy nightmares, so don't do that. But has just a phenomenal cast led by Edgar Ramirez and Mandy Moore, an amazing ensemble cast. So make sure to catch it on now on Peacock. But I want to go back to Dr. Death season 1, because first of all, it was a popular podcast from Wondery. Patrick, how did you get involved in kind of adapting it for the small screen?
Yeah, so I was running a show on sci-fi called Happy at the time for UCP, which is the studio that we work with, and the podcast hadn't come out yet. The Wondery and Escape Artists, who were the producing partners on it, they were sending it out to writers to see if anybody was interested. It was repped by UTA, which is my agency, and so it went out to a bunch of writers there. I can't answer the question to you as to like how I got chosen. There were a lot of us. I came up with a pitch. I came up with a take. I pitched all of Wondery. I pitched all of Escape Artists, and I got picked. I will say that it was definitely one of the more challenging pitches. Not for any other reason than when we were actually taking it out, it had already become like #1 everywhere. And so my immediate pressure was, did I totally screw this? Did I totally screw this up? Because it had like 50 million downloads. It was insane. And so I normally don't feel a whole lot of pressure pitching or writing. It's not that I'm like cool or good. I joke-ish that I'm sociopathic. I just don't let things sort of get to me. But this one sort of like it started to break through the wall of sociopathy for sure a little bit, because it was so good and it was so compelling on its face. And Randy, you've heard me say before, like, you have to be a really shitty writer to screw that story up. And some people here may have watched the show and believe that I was a really shitty writer. It's totally possible. But it was really, I did the pitch and it was luck of the draw. I don't know what everybody else came up with, but I somehow fooled them. And that's really all of Hollywood. You just somehow fool them.
I love that. And, there was so much source material, and obviously in research. And so just in crafting the pitch part of it, how did you, obviously you delved in, but how much of it did you use? How did you approach that process? Because it's just, unlike coming up with somebody new when you're adapting something and something like this. I mean, there's got to be endless amounts of information you can try to research and find.
100%. Yeah, no, there were, once I got the gig, Wondery and Laura Beale, who was the amazing journalist who did the podcast, they dumped thousands of pages of research on me. I mean, it was court records and medical records and journalists and investigations and all the different hospital records. And it was absolutely overwhelming. And I am someone who enjoys research, but I sort of enjoy researching things that I enjoy researching. So like if you give me like something having to do with world history, I'm like, I'm in. You give me anything having to do with math and science, I just immediately just go blank. And so this was a particular challenge. I will say that for the pilot, I didn't use a lot of it because I just didn't have to. There was like some surface stuff on the pilot that I could get by, but I did have to go to a couple of hospitals and have some people help me punch up the dialogue. But then as we got into episodes 2 through 8 and we were actually in the writer's room, it became completely overwhelming. And so what I did with the writers was that I actually assigned hospitals and characters to each of the writers, and we divvied it up, and everyone sort of went home and studied, except for me. I'm the only one who didn't study. I was like, I came into the room and I was like, "What'd you learn?" And then people taught me what they learned. But I will say, look, I mean, I think that I'm constantly learning, and I know that I'm Girl from Plainville. I learned how to do it a little bit differently and a little bit more efficiently. Every show I learn through my mess ups how I could do it better. And I think that there's always a way of sort of like getting through that material and organizing that material and organizing my thoughts better than I did on this one. But I will say, as somebody who got a D in math and science solidly from second grade on, it was a challenge. There's no question.
Yeah, I just think it's so impressive, just given the amount of that. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit because I know you're, as a production company, that this is very important to you, and you've spoken about this before. And I've always just, I think it's just so critically important with a story like this. But how do you approach the social responsibility factor, and what are the kinds of things that you find it's important to do, both as a writer, as showrunners, as executive producers, as part of the show? How is your approach to that with a story that's so real and affected so many people?
Well, I'm going to kick this one over to Kelly. I will give the lead in just to say that, and Randy, you know my wife, Ioli, who is the head of our social and philanthropy. She got when I met her, she was doing development work, not in Hollywood, but in third world countries, and with nonprofits. And I knew that when I started my career that I couldn't only do Hollywood. It would be really embarrassing being around her when she was doing what she was doing. So I always had an idea that I wanted our shows to do something more. I want to put that in big quotes because I had no definition of what that was. And when Kelly and I started working specifically on Dr. Death, and when I said to Ioli and Kelly, I was like, I'd like to do something more. I literally sort of backed out of the room as Kelly and Ioli took it from there. And so as I kick it over to Kelly to explain it a little bit more, I will say that it is incumbent when you do true stories to try to do them as respectfully and honestly and in as non-salacious manner as possible. And that becomes very difficult because sometimes audiences want all of that stuff. And you have to find the balancing act between what is, that rubbernecking side of things and what is your responsibility as a storyteller to be respectful to specifically to the victims in these cases. And so I think as a kickoff to our social action campaigns, Dr. Death, Girl from Plainville, Death 2, and what will come down the road, I think in the next months to years ahead, I think what we're trying to do is something different and something I hope is special. But Kelly.
So actually, Lexi brought up a good question in the chat, which is she said, common questions that come up after you deliver a pitch. And this ties in, Lexi. The biggest question that we see over and over and over again is why now? Why are you trying to tell the story that you're trying to tell? And I've watched a lot of writers not be able to answer that question. There is a sense in this new world order in the last few years of every single studio wanting on the surface to have a bridge between entertainment and this concept that there is something more that we can be doing with the shows. And so we started a social action campaign. We build on every single show. Each of our showrunners are given an opportunity to pull out a theme or a section of the show that they think is worth putting a micro lens on. In the instance of Dr. Death, it season 1, it was a broad patient safety education. Season 2 is exploring the role of technology in medicine. I mean, for those of you who have seen the show without giving away any spoilers, this doctor is, committed to, in theory, innovating in medicine. And there's a really amazing mini monologue that Edgar Ramirez has in 102, where he talks about the fact that none of the things that we take for granted today in medicine happened without literally killing people. He doesn't say it that baldly, but he does say, like, how do you think we got here? So our social action campaigns, we pull out. We have, at this point, through the benefit of our partners at USG, they allow us to do a day and date marketing campaign around these social action issues, tying back to the show. And it has allowed us to be able to communicate with our audiences, especially millennials and Gen Z, who I think are holding all of us, as a Gen Xer, I will say, holding all of us to a new level of accountability on everything that we do, including in our entertainment. And it allows us to be able to communicate with them and show them, yes, this is the show, but these are things that you should be thinking about from the show. And these are actions that you can take if this is an issue that is important to you. I spent most of Christmas communicating with people on social media who were commenting about their fear of going to a hospital or a doctor after seeing the show. And that is certainly not the intended takeaway of Dr. Death. It's actually quite the opposite. So it's a really interesting part of our company. Our studios and distributors do that work, but you don't see a lot of production companies doing that work. And so we have found that it's an additional way for us to connect with our audience, and people seem to really appreciate it and recognize it for the value add that it brings to the table, not just being entertained, but also being educated.
I think that's so important, and the work that you do is so incredible. And just out of curiosity, obviously you said, what you kind of put the lens on comes out of, the writer's room and the process, but do you use that as part of your pitch? Do you talk about that, or do you say, hey, we want to make sure that this is important? Is that a part of the pitch process?
The why now is a question. Again,
okay. Yeah.
Once we share the doc with everyone, they'll see that we say to our writers, we want you to give us 350 words on why now, because it's an important question that if you choose not to put it in the pitch, then we're like, you've got to have that ready to go for the Q&A, because that'll be the first thing that you will be asked is, why should we be telling this story now? So yeah, we are very cognizant of integrating it into our storytelling.
Amazing. Well, we're going to stay on here, and thank you for those of you who have put in questions. We do have a Q&A time at the end, so we will definitely get to those, and we're going to continue to chat through Dr. Death. But I'm going to invite back our friends at Canva here to walk us through one of their amazing tools that, as we've talked about and sort of segued into here about sort of all the information, research, timelines, all the things that sort of went into the writer's room and the development and creative process of Dr. Death, kind of a unique way to organize them using this incredible platform.
All right, I am going to hop in and share my screen so we can do a little bit of a demo here, and you'll have to confirm for me if you can see my screen all right. Are we all
sure
good?
Can.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, so Kate actually mentioned in the beginning the fact that Canva originally started out as really a social media graphic design sort of tool, and that I think still a lot of folks have the idea that Canva is just a tool for designing visual content. And it's very effective at doing that. But it is also a really effective tool to ideate, to organize information. And Patrick mentioned the fact that he received a lot of data, a lot of information from Wondery, and we wanted to show you a way that you could potentially use Canva to organize that information if you had a complex timeline like they had for Dr. Death. So for example, this is just a very quick this is the first page of a multi-page PDF that laid out the timeline, and you can see it's a lot of data. It can be very difficult to
This is bringing back memories. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Bit triggering,
I'm sorry,
Patrick.
Yeah, I'm starting to twitch.
I'm so
I apologize.
sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
We'll put it away. We'll put it away. But there are other ways that you can lay information out in a more visual way, and we're going to show you how to do that with a whiteboard. But I'm going to take a quick step back and show you where you can find whiteboards if you're not familiar with using this inside of Canva. So this is the Canva homepage, and you'll see up here also this should look familiar because Kate did walk through the visual work suite at the beginning of the presentation, and you'll see all of those options here, and you can choose any of them if you wanted to start a doc, if you wanted to start a presentation, and so on. But you'll also see whiteboards appears right here. So we're going to select that, and you're going to see a variety of different categories of whiteboards that you can choose from, but you can also access all of this if you're directly in the templates area. So if we hop over to templates, again, whiteboard is going to be an option here, and it's going to give you a wide variety of templates that you can start with. So maybe you have an idea of the kind of content that you want to lay out, but you don't really want to start with a completely blank whiteboard, because this is what that will look like. This is great if you need something really, you want to start from scratch, but this can be very overwhelming if you're not sure where to get started. So we want to show you, here are some places where you can get started if you want to have a little bit of a kickstart. But we're not going to start with a blank page today. We're going to start with a little bit of a design, a little template that we've mocked up to start with here. And what I want to show you from the beginning here is that this editor, if you're familiar with using Canva, this layout is going to be pretty much the same as what you may have used to create Instagram content or presentations or any other kind of content inside of Canva. You're going to have all of the same sort of options on the left-hand side here. You're going to have your templates, elements, text, brand kit, and so on. But there is one difference. If you go to elements, you're also going to see some options here that won't appear on a regular design. So you're going to have sticky notes, and you're also going to have whiteboard graphics. These can be really effective if you're collaborating on a whiteboard. Let's say you are sharing ideas and you want to be able to chime in and indicate whether you think, an idea is a really good one. Maybe you want to give it a +1 or a smiley face. This is just a way to give you a little bit of interactivity without having to actually add comments or text. But other than that, the rest is pretty much going to be the same. But the only other difference is this layout looks a little different. You're not going to see any constraints. You're not seeing a page design with limitations here. And that's because with a whiteboard, it's basically infinite ideation space. So if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see you can just keep building out and out and out. And when you're dealing with a really complex timeline that has a lot of data, this is going to make it really effective if you wanted to keep adding more data, more dates, and so on. So this can be really effective. So we are going to do a little bit of customization here. What you'll see is we've got different kinds of components. We've got text here. We've got shapes and text. We've got these sticky notes. I will scroll in a little bit so you can see a little closer. Let's say we had a brand kit that we wanted to pull into this to make it feel a little bit more on brand. Maybe I want to change the color of this. So I could change that by going to my brand kit area here, and I could change that to be part of my brand kit colors. I could do the same thing here. Maybe I want to change the backgrounds to be consistently this gray, and then I can tell it to change all of them to that color. So you can customize it the same way you can any sort of Canva design. But I think the real power here is in the collaboration options. And I am going to start by Kate is going to jump in, and we're going to do a little bit of collaborating on this, but I'm going to start by giving her something to actually collaborate on, because Patrick had mentioned, actually, Kate, I think you might have mentioned earlier that Patrick liked to assign characters to writers. So we're going to do that right now. I am going to start with Christopher and adding some more data, but I need to give Kate another section so she can work on, let's say, Jerry. So I'm selecting all of these components. I'm just dragging and selecting all of them, and then I'm going to duplicate them. And now if I drag them over, now miss the background, but we're not going to worry about that because I'm going to unlock that, and then I'm going to duplicate that and pull that over again here. Then I'm going to just send that to the back. All right. Whoops. Gotta be careful not to move it around too much. Now, I would have to drag it around and get it a little more even there. But Kate, do you want to hop in and you can maybe start by changing the name?
Yeah,
on
for
Christopher
sure.
here. And what I
Yeah.
think we should do is maybe set a little bit of a timer here, because one of the fun things about working in a collaborative environment like this is, let's say you want to have a brainstorming period for a really specific period of time. Down here in the lower left-hand corner, you're going to see something that says show timer. Now, if I select this, I can specify how much time I might want us to work on adding in data into this design. I could even choose music if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that, but there's various options here that you could choose from if you wanted to add a little bit of ambiance while you're working on this. We're going to leave it as no music, but I am going to set a timer, and then we're just going to start adding in different components. And Kate, I will start it there.
So I'm going to actually add some pictures in of the character Jerry Summers too. So we added in some images before the demo into the brand kit of these characters. So Brenda pointed out the brand kit before. We've got some images of Jerry Summers. So I'm actually going to have him up here as well, just for a visual reference of who our character is. You can have a whole host of different visual references too, but I'm going to add some key timeline things in 2011, Brenda, for Jerry.
All right, and I am going to work on adding a few more into 2011 and show you how we can keep expanding this.
I lied, 2012.
2012. So you'll see it has expanded it down here. I can see that timer is going to run out, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn that off so it doesn't suddenly blare at us and scare us half to death. But you can select items, and I could continue to drag this down. I could continue to add additional sticky notes here, either by going back into elements and clicking and adding fresh sticky notes, or I could even just selecting an existing one and I could duplicate it and drag it down, and then just select the text in it and delete it. And then I can resize it. So you can continue to add additional components as much as you need. Let's say you know what, I've got an item here for Jerry Summers. So maybe that actually belongs over in the Jerry Summers section. So we can click on it and we could drag it right over. So I'm going to try not to mess with your flow there.
No, all good. And I think, Patrick, like you were saying, and as Brenda said, you know, there's a bunch of people, researchers, writers, collaborators that, you know, are all involved in trying to just organize the huge amount of IP that you had for Dr. Death. And that can be happening IRL in a room with literal sticky notes put on walls, which we know some writers' rooms absolutely do. But you can also do that using Canva in this form as well.
It's actually it's something we didn't discuss when we first started this conversation, but one of the things just before COVID happened was I was actually trying to get big screen TVs put into our writers' rooms so that the writer's assistant could actually. I have a rule in my room, which is that I don't care if you're a staff writer or you're an executive producer. When it's your episode, you have to write on the board. And so one of the things that I was trying to implement just before COVID happened, and then everything went automated, but on computers, was to actually have a system where the writer who was writing the episode would control the board, but from their seat, so that I have terrible handwriting. So this is actually the kind of thing that could absolutely come in extraordinarily handy with breaking episodes, and whether you're actually in a writer's room or you're breaking it in on your own. Again, as I said, and you alluded back to, I was in a nightmare of a shitstorm of information, and I joked that I had things on the back of matchbooks trying to keep information straight. So yeah, I mean, this is very often like what we do in the writer's room, quite frankly.
Excellent.
Yeah,
all right,
fantastic.
So, and then you could just add as many as you needed. So let's say we wanted to keep adding them for additional patients. We could even have a set here where it's just blank, and we just want to be able to have the blank information copy and paste it as many times as we need. Then there's one other little thing I do want to highlight here, though. You could use this potentially as a bit of a hub, a dashboard for a centralized document. I think, Kelly, you had referred to it as one version of the truth. And that's the way it ensures everybody's kind of literally on the same page in terms of the content that you're accessing, the documentation that you're accessing. So you can see I've added a little text box here that says Dropbox resources. Let's say all of the backup content that was used to support the data that was in here is living on Dropbox. We could link to the relevant resources just by adding a bit of a piece of text. You can select it. I can then, see, it's already got a link in there, but if it didn't, I will remove that. And you can actually link, I could put it to, let's say, dropbox.com. So enter it and done. So this way, everybody has one source that they need to refer to. There's no wondering, okay, where does that particular document live? It just really streamlines it. It makes it a lot easier for folks to find what they're looking for. This is a great way for this sort of layout is really effective at ideating and compiling information. Obviously, it's not so great if you want to be able to print it out and refer to it. So I do want to indicate, though, that once you're done with this, if you wanted to be able to have it in a more printable format, you could easily go to this magic switch option and you would be able to transform it into a doc. Now, I'm not going to do that live because it would take a few minutes to do that, but I can show you that I did this previously with the more simplified version we had when we opened the document, and it just summarized everything. I told it to transform it into a summary doc, and then it just does that into this single document here. And then if I go to share, I can then choose to download it as a PDF, whether I want that in A4 or letter size, legal size, whatever. And then you can actually have it in a more portable format that you could print out and you could make notes on, because, you know, sometimes we just need to have put pen to paper, as much as there are some really fantastic tools like this to be able to experiment with. And then the only other thing I'll mention about sharing it, like that's downloading it and saving it. But if you wanted to share this document so you could collaborate on it, if you click on the share button in the top here, you're going to see different options. You can share it directly with somebody on your team. You can also choose, you know, you could change it to anyone with the link and then choose whether you want them to be able to edit it, if you wanted to collaborate on it, or if you just want them to be able to view the content, you could choose can view, and then they're not going to be able to make any changes to what is on this whiteboard, but they'll be able to see all the content that has been collaborated on and compiled here. But we're going to also wrap up with the fact that there are some, Kate, you mentioned in the beginning that there's some templates as well that have been created specifically for the entertainment industry. So you don't have to hop on and share your screen. I've got this up for you here, and maybe I'll just scroll down while you describe a little bit of this.
Thank you, Brenda, because my internet's not being too kind to me this afternoon, which is great timing. But yeah, the templates that I mentioned earlier are on canva.com/entertainment. So these are the industry-specific templates that we made based on your feedback. So we surveyed a whole host of industry professionals and asked them, you know, what kind of templates do you need? And so the feedback came in, we need TV and film pitch decks, TV series Bibles, treatment decks, posters. There's a whole swag of whiteboard templates on there too. So right from the kind of the inception of the idea, right through to promoting your TV or film, we've got a template here for you, but we're adding to them all the time. So there's going to be a survey where we'll ask you at the end of this webinar if you've got any more suggestions. We're all ears. But yeah, they're all there for you. They're all free, and we'd love to see you use them.
Before you guys wrap, just because I saw this question come up in the chat, was AI and how it features in here. And I know that you guys are not only have it, but continuing to develop it fast and furiously, and more every time I go on. I even see new things and new features. So I just wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Kate, do you want to highlight any particular one, and I can pull it up and show a few options?
Absolutely.
Here.
Yeah, well, the magic switch, which you were demonstrating before. So AI just more broadly, we call it magic in Canva. It's infused throughout the entire product. So at the exact point of design, you can Down on the bottom right, you'll see that blue little star on Brenda's screen. That's the magic assistant, and that can bring up different magic tools that we've got. But when Brenda was demoing spinning this whiteboard into a document, that's called Magic Switch. So within one click, you can change documents into different formats. There's AI tools for translate. So we could translate this whole whiteboard into a whole host of different languages. I use it to summarize text if I'm just getting a bit wafty and I want to change, magic summarize from a quick 2 paragraphs into 3 lines. It's like that as well. So if you go onto canva.com/magic, I believe it is, I will check. You can check out all of our magic tools. I think, Brenda, you're about to demo, is it background remover? If I'm guessing.
It is. If you select any image, you're going to be able to find a variety of magic editing tools as well. So there's background remover has been around for quite some time, but it is considered now to be part of the Magic Suite. We also have Magic Eraser, Magic Expand, Edit, Grab. We don't have time to demonstrate all of those, but we did a little bit of that in the first workshop as well. So if you take a look at the recording for that, if you missed that workshop, you'll see some of these in action. But just really quickly, let's say we wanted to remove this background, click on it, and there you go. You actually could continue to adjust it if you wanted to. If I click on the little controls here after it's been edited, let's say I wanted to restore some part of it, I could, or if I wanted to remove a little more of it, I can continue to remove more of it. So that's just probably one of the most popular, most heavily used tools within the Magic Suite. But I do encourage playing with these because they're just a lot of fun if you have some time to spend. So.
Absolutely. We love that. We love the magic remover at SeriesFest. If you've gotten a deck from us ever, you have seen that magic remover in action many times. I also just have to say, I love that you call AI instead of big scary monster or something like that, magic. Like, I'm going to take that from now on, anytime. When we do our AI workshop at SeriesFest, it'll be called the Magic Workshop.
A little bit of magic, yeah.
A little bit of magic. We have some questions, actually, quite a few questions in, so I'd love to segue over. And Patrick, the first one is for you from Sean. Thank you for writing in, Sean. With audience consumption shifting to an interactive, immersive experiences, something like Apple Vision Pro, how do you think it will change the creation development process for transmedia IP?
By the way, I want to know if this is like the Sean Dawes that I knew from a long time ago.
It
is. Okay. Hi, Sean. Nice to see you, man. I actually, this is from Sean. Yeah, I can tell. I will say that I presume that it's going to change exponentially. I all kidding aside, I hope that I'm retired by then, because I am absolutely a bit of a dinosaur. And I'm a classicist as it relates to all of this, but I can tell you right now that people who are far younger than me, who are diving in, are taking full advantage of all of the tools that are at their disposal to be able to make a far more compelling pitch, and to get their ideas across, and to also organize their ideas. So while I will never change, and that is why I'll be forced into retirement, there's no question that it's here. It's already here. And Sean, if you want to follow up on that, I'm happy to follow up on that. But anyways, go ahead. Sorry, Randy.
Thank you, Patrick. No, here's another question from Esther. And Esther, hopefully I do this justice here, but I believe Esther's in the beginning stages of writing a show, and wondering, I guess maybe, and I'm assuming this is, do they need to create a full pilot before pitching? Do you always write the pilot, or what are the steps needed before, as you're starting the process to make sure, they've got the correct materials in place?
Yeah, I'll start and then you can take over. I mean, this is a terrible non-answer. Unfortunately, it's a cop-out answer, but it's just the truth. It entirely depends on what quarter it is in Hollywood at the time. Before the strike, everyone was telling us to stop packaging things, to stop writing scripts, to just do pitches, that the buyers wanted to have more control than they had in the past over who directs, who acts, and who the whole pilot process. And we went into the strike being like, we're changing our entire perspective. And we came out of the strike and everyone was like, packages, we need scripts. And so it literally shifted within like 6 months. And over the course of my career from 2004 until 2024, it has shifted probably 3 or 4 times. I will tell you only privately, and then I will kick it over to Kelly. I will tell you privately that I write. I have a very difficult time, with very few exceptions, not writing a pilot first. I don't know how to just like write on a blank page and come up with things. I need to sort of feel it. So I'd say 8 out of 10 times I write the pilot and then develop the pitch on the backside of that, because it's just my way. And even if nobody reads the pilot and they only hear the pitch. But Kelly, do you want to add to that?
The only thing I'm going to add is if it's early days as a writer, you should be writing pilots all the time, and here's why. There is a misbelief, in my humble opinion, that writers need to figure out what their brand is when they're an early days writer, and I categorically disagree with that. When you are starting out, you need to be writing, and you need to be writing multiple samples so that your reps are capable of putting you up for a bunch of different shows. So do yourself a favor, write the pilot so that you've got the library, so that as you keep going, and I have no problem embarrassing my brother. Like a few years ago, we were up for a huge show with a huge A+ list star, and Patrick had already done a bunch of shows, and they were like, we'd like to read a pilot. And thank God, like Patrick had something in the library that was tonally adjacent to this show that they wanted us to consider. So I would just say, do yourself a favor, write and build up your library so that you have a host of samples to be able to give either for staffing purposes or for selling purposes.
Do you recommend, Kelly, and I'm paraphrasing someone's an anonymous question here, but do you recommend for more emerging writers, if they're reaching out to try and get pitch meetings, should they be attaching their pitch decks? And what materials should they be including in that, before, trying to get in the room for the pitch, right? So this would be like, I guess, as they say, kind of nonverbal, or doesn't require verbal presentation.
Sure. I think that the challenges, and I'm sure every early days writer here who is not represented knows, is the challenge is getting through to the buyers if you aren't represented, because there is a legal issue for them taking non-repped material out of abundance of caution in terms of appropriating writers' ideas. We as a company, despite the fact that our lawyers hate the fact that we do it, we do actually read non-represented writers. And in that instance, what I find is very helpful is actually a visual deck close to what Canva is pushing and encouraging you towards, that really sort of allows me in 3 to 4 pages to get a good sense of what it is that I would then be hearing in a 27 to 30 minute pitch. And I answered privately a question. I think someone asked, what should the length of a pitch be? It's 4,500 words, 27 minutes tops. At 8 point, folks. I know people that are like, but if I make it smaller, no, that's why we do a word count. 4,500 words is going to get you to about 27 minutes, and your pitch should not be longer than that. So a really nice, robust 3-pager that gives me a good sense of what it is that I'd be hearing is the most effective way to communicate if that's your first point of touch with an executive.
Thank you. All right, I have another Dr. Death question. Okay, I'm going to read this one slowly, but it is a kind of cool question, but it's heady here, so I'm going to read it slowly for you, Patrick. How does Dr. Death employ narrative paradoxes or self-contradictory elements intentionally, challenging the audience's perception and inviting them to navigate the complexities of the story in a non-linear yet cohesive manner, including maybe how you included that in the pitch for the show? Because you play with timeline. I guess that's really the I think. That's
yeah, no. I was thesaurusing a little bit. Yeah, no. This is, look, I'm being honest. Like, this is what I love about writing, and what all of us here and on the chat love to do, which is to create. And I would say 8 out of 10 times that I've written on a show, whether it's me or someone else has done it, that people interpret things their own ways, and that's the way that it should be. I will say that the reason that I played with timelines in Dr. Death was honestly very mechanical. And it's funny, I like every time that there's been criticism of the timelines of Death or Plainville or Death 2, and it'll go on and on and on. People are like, why can't you just tell it linearly? It's too confusing. But if for instance, for Dr. Death, if you told it linearly, then you wouldn't meet your heroes and they wouldn't start chasing the bad guy until episode 5 out of 5 episodes. And so, to be completely frank, it was because it would have been boring as all hell. You needed the chase to make it work. I will say, that being said, that I have a personal affinity for timelines and for how they and for how artists play with timelines, mostly out of like a little giddy pleasure that I have, which is watching timelines catch up with each other, or watching things that happen in the first half pay off in the second half, and all of those little things that if you do it well, and I'm not saying that I did, but if you do it well, it's an extra bonus to watching something. And I find it fun, quite frankly. But the real reason why I did it was because it would be boring. You wouldn't have your good guys chasing your bad guys until halfway through the show.
I just personally would say, I thought the timeline with Dr. Death worked so incredibly well. I mean, it does, because you sort of start with knowing that there's people, and then you kind of see it unfold and come back together. Like you said, the payoff in the second half by getting us excited and bringing in that inciting instance where we know there's people realizing what he's doing. I think it's
fun.
brilliant.
It's a fun thing.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Also, everybody says I don't know how to tell a story in linear fashion. So I'm literally writing another pilot right now that is out of order as well. And there's another one that I wrote like 6 weeks ago that's out of order as well. So I guess I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it otherwise. Yeah.
Here's another question from a filmmaker, Gio. Gio has a proof of concept and a pitch deck, a 1-pager, and a video pitch for a TV series. Do you have advice for searching for a literary agent or production companies to get meetings to pitch our project? And I'll say, apparently, Gio, you've submitted to SeriesFest as well, so thank you for that. We'll look out for that.
So I guess I will take that one. Look, just submit to every single writing contest that you can. I think we all know the list. If you don't know the list, super happy to share sort of top 10. Blacklist is at the top of that list. Nichols Fellowship via the Academy, both TV and film, is a great one to go through. And submit to the festivals. I have done it all early in my career, and it is not fun. It is also expensive. I know there are fees. I mean, not many places are as generous as SeriesFest. A lot of people make you pay. And trust me, I worked a bunch of waitering shifts more often than I'd like to admit in order to be able to come up with fees to submit short films in the early part of my career. So, but there is a reason why that ecosystem exists, and it's because the ecosystem does work. So take heart. If it is a good one, someone is going to find it. And I promise you on that, right? And it doesn't mean that the stuff that doesn't get selected isn't good, but it does mean that normally across all these different festivals, a person that's meant to find you is going to find you. Other than that, literary agents are really impossible to get to. And I would say the other piece of advice is, if you can find open-hearted production companies, a lot of times they will help champion non-represented writers if they find someone that they're excited about. We were talking before, guys, about the writer of episode 205 on Dr. Death, who was a young early days writer that Patrick and I helped champion, and is now on his 3rd room with us. So there are production companies that are invested in that. Most of the time, those are writer-led production companies. So directors will take care of directors. Regular old-fashioned producers are probably not going to be super helpful. But writers try to help their own, and directors try to help their own. And those are great people to reach out to. The last thing I'd say is, if you want to get into a production company, please go to the assistant of the head of the company. Those people are going to be presidents of production companies someday. They want the collateral of bringing into their boss and voice that they have not found. I am not saying that I discovered Ted Griffin, but Ted Griffin, who back in the day wrote Ocean's 11, I was an early days assistant, and he reached out to me and I helped him develop on the side for a year. And obviously we didn't make Ocean's 11. Somebody else went on to make it, but I'm telling you, like, hit the assistants, folks, and the coordinators, because they are the people that are going to come up through the ranks with you. So don't go after the me, go after the my assistant.
Well, personally, thank you, Kelly, for Ocean's 11, because
It wasn't
truly
me.
enjoyed it.
Again,
I'm just kidding.
my notes on that, my notes were not on Ocean's 11. They were on Ted's first script about a bunch of cannibals in the middle of Colorado, and it was a horrible idea for a film, but he was a very, very talented writer.
Yeah,
and then, of course, he went and wrote Ocean's 11, and I didn't get to see that because I wasn't fancy enough. But the point is that coordinators are the key, either at the agencies or at the production companies, to getting your stuff through the door.
Perfect. Well, I think we've gone a little bit over, so I want to respect everybody's time. But thank you so much, Kelly, Patrick, Kate, and Brenda, for sharing your time with us, your expertise, your insights. We're so grateful to everybody out there that watched. Thank you. We're going to be sharing this recording along with all the resources, materials that we sent shortly after. So look out for that in the next couple of days. Thank you again to everybody. And we have one more Vanguard program coming up. Stay tuned for that. We'll have David Diggs and Raphael Cassell joining us, the creators of Blind Spotting. You may also know David from a little small musical called Hamilton. So join us for that one. Stay tuned. Thank you again, everyone, for that. And have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Hang in there.